right, we're going to have a wonderful time tonight. We're going to be talking about the coronavirus. And I couldn't stop myself. The corona beer virus. Can you believe it? This is actually trending, and it's amazing. That's really not what it is. The corona is Spanish for a crown. Another corona word is a glowing circle of light around an object. So you can see the sun's corona in an eclipse, right? And so this is what it looks like. Isn't that kind of cool? And you go, well, that's kind of cool. That little bad boy right there is causing a lot of problems right now. And what I was thinking about doing is, right now, here we are in 2020, and we're talking. We're talking in the middle of February 2020 when we're filming this. We are right in the middle of a pretty crazy thing right now with the coronavirus that's coming out of the Wuhan area of China. But I was thinking, well, let's talk about other viruses and which ones have been a problem over the years. And so probably the big one that we're going to talk about tonight, I've got some interesting statistics on that, is the huge pandemic that happened in 1918 and 1919. That was called the Spanish flu. And then there were also, over the years, there have been a number of things, like 1968, there was one we remember the swine flu, Ebola, SARS, and now we've got the coronavirus. And essentially, over most of the years, the flu has some modifications and so forth that goes along. But what we worry about are what are called these novel viruses. And what happens is, take the case of the Ebola. This is a great picture that I love. Essentially, animal-to-animal transmission, and a lot of animals, there's strains that are in those animals. Now, typically, they don't then affect us. The problem happens when either we eat those animals, right, or bats, we come into contact with their bodily fluids or something like that, maybe their poop or something of that nature, and they get eaten by a human, and then it either changes or then transmits from that human to another human. That's where we run into problems. And if it's a viable virus, then that can then transmit human to human and go and so forth. Okay. So one of the things that we have to do is when the Ebola virus, that whole scare came out, what we had to do is we basically stopped travel to and from West Africa because that was where it was clustered. Now, so Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone. Now, what's happening now? Well, we've had to do a very similar thing in the United States. President Trump has had to issue a proclamation. And basically, we're not allowing any flights in or out of China, is essentially what's happening. And why is that so important? Well, because we've got to stop this transmission from human to human. We don't really know right now as it stands. We don't know how, but we've got a couple thousand that are admitted to, at least, have been affected by it worldwide. The number is probably quite a bit higher because we're somewhat dependent on the statistics from China, and those are somewhat suspect. But my wife and I have a cruise on Princess Cruise Line that's scheduled for this summer. Now, guess who's a little nervous? That would be us. Okay. In fact, I just found the Diamond Princess quarantine, an epic failure. So this cruise ship, as you know, has been docked in Japan for almost 14 days now, right? Yeah. And what they found, there was someone who had gotten on in Hong Kong and then got off in Singapore or something like that. They were only on the cruise ship for a little bit of time, but in that it was enough to then introduce this virus to people on the cruise ship. And once they discovered they had it, they went into quarantine. And so it started with 15 people, the one turned to 15, and then they've kept adding up. As of today, there are 542 cases of the virus. That's among the 3,711 quarantined passengers and crew. So that's a lot of people, 542. So what do we then know about the transmission of this? That it must pass from person to person fairly readily. So now the question then also is not only transmission, but then will people die from this or not, right? That's the next question, because some of these flus will be, a lot of people will get them, but they won't die from them. And that's what we really don't know yet. Just here again out of China, we don't really know the statistics, but unfortunately, we're going to probably be getting some better data as time goes on here. The other thing that's scary about this particular situation is it was just a few days ago that the U.S. chartered 2 airplanes to come and take American citizens and fly them from Japan to a couple of bases in the U.S. Well, Unfortunately, they should have waited just another day because they didn't have the test findings before they got everybody loaded up on the plane. But apparently 15 patients in that on those air flights had the virus. And at that point, they had already made the plans and everyone was going to be quarantined 14 days anyway. So I think somebody just made the decision, just get the people back to the U.S. Now the problem is that puts a lot of people in the United States who have this, right? We're bringing the virus to us essentially. So that's one of the challenges we face. Is how do we deal with this? And it really is kind of scary. And I would say, kind of the pat answers don't work either, because what do we do so we don't get the flu? Get a flu shot, hand sanitizer, stay home and avoid people. Come on. Yeah, I mean. So people still are going to get the flu. They're going to get this flu. I mean, it's like that's not. So the question is, well, first of all, what about a flu shot for this coronavirus? Does it even exist?
We don't know that.
It doesn't even exist. No, because this is a novel virus. So how long does it take to manufacture? Well, typically it takes the flu shot is predicted a year in advance, and so it takes about a year to manufacture it. Now they make quick, they might get something coming out within several months if possible, but by and large, a flu vaccine usually takes at least a year. So that means while this flu sweeps across or moves through the world, there won't be a way to stop it. And that means you and I, our immune systems have to be what stops it in our bodies, right? And so that's kind of interesting. And that's also why I, as a chiropractor, am giving a talk, because you go, well, we do need to change our thinking just a little bit, and we'll kind of talk about why chiropractic is so powerful. But medical philosophy says you get sick when exposed to a bad bug. So this is a bad bug, right? So the medical doctors say, oh no, you're going to get a bad bug, so you need to wear a face mask, and this bug is going to invade you and you're going to die, right? That's kind of the medical model. The chiropractic model says, well, you get sick when your immune system is weak, you see. So what I'm going to try to do is say, what can we do as people to boost our immune system and make it so that even if it does come here, that we've done everything possible to stay healthy so our body has their shields up. And it does require a perspective. And if you look at this thing, do you see this old lady sitting here with the big nose and all that sort of stuff? All right. So if you shift your thinking a little bit and you see this young lady whose head is turned away, you see the same thing that we look at. It's just our perspective is a little bit different. We're looking at the same thing, and so I would propose that we need to look at the same problem but look at it a little differently. And the paradigm really starts, Dr. Palmer in his 1910 book, and I have one of those books that was given to my father by Dee Dee's grandson. But he asked, why does one person sitting at a bench get sick and the man sitting at the bench next to him doesn't? Why? What is that? What is different? It can't be the bug, it can't be the environment. There has to be something different about those two people, why one gets sick and one doesn't. So that's going to be where we're going to go with this. And if we start talking and thinking about the Spanish flu, this is the bad pandemic that happened 100 years ago. Basically, it killed about 500,000 people here in the United States. Worldwide, we don't really know. The estimate is anywhere between 20 to 100 million. So if we say 50 million or something like that, a lot of people died. More people died from this than all the wars combined. I mean, we're talking a huge amount of deaths. Now, this was before the antibiotics, and so one of the things they're saying is a lot of people who died probably end up dying from pneumonia. And so nowadays we wouldn't have the death rate that they did, even if it does happen to be a very virulent strain. So let's talk about chiropractic and the flu. We ultimately became known as flu doctors, and in Wisconsin, chiropractors went house to house because if they were in quarantine, they couldn't leave their homes, right? Mm-hmm. So there were chiropractors in Wisconsin who would go to the people's homes who were in quarantine. In Davenport, Iowa, there were 50 medical doctors, and they saw 4,953 cases. And look at the number of deaths. So of that almost 5,000 cases, there were 274 deaths. But look at the chiropractors. Now, there were 150, there are more of them, but they didn't see as many cases. But how many deaths? One. Okay? What about Iowa? Well, in Iowa, 93,590 patients and 6,116 deaths. Is that scary? That's not good. So 1 in 15 died. Now, those brave souls who decided to go see a chiropractor instead. Now, there weren't as many. More people went to see the medical doctor, right? This was scary stuff. But you see that only 6 died. So 1 in 789 versus 1 in 15. Nationally, 1,142 chiropractors treated 46,394 patients for flu in 1918, and only 54 died. You see, so 1 death per 866 patients. In New York, medical care, 950 deaths per 10,000 cases. Chiropractic, only 25 deaths per 10,000. So when we start talking about chiropractic, do you understand when it relates to this flu and a bad pandemic, we are actually not talking about your back pain or headaches or anything of that nature. We're actually talking about whether you live or whether you die. So when I give you an adjustment, it's really important that we think about how important this really is for you. And so this is something, as I'm thinking about this pandemic and I'm thinking about these viral particles, when I'm adjusting you, I'm thinking about, am I going to prepare you to not get sick and not die from the flu if you're getting adjusted? And then you go, you know what, this adjustment may be the most precious thing I could give you. You go, oh. And it goes on. When we talk about pneumonia, now, and understand, this was before antibiotics, but still, I mean, if you got pneumonia in New York State, out of 10,000 cases of pneumonia, 6,400 people died. So over half of the people died who got pneumonia.
Yeah.
But you look at under chiropractic care, of the 10,000 people, only 100 would die. Why would they not die? You understand?
Yeah.
So now, was it because we had magic pills or anything? No, right? Nobody did. Nobody had. And so what we must have been doing is releasing within that patient the power to fight it off on its own. All right. And so that's really so. Hey guys, come on in. So in Oklahoma, chiropractors treated 3,490 cases of flu and only 7 deaths. Also, 233 cases the medical doctors gave up as lost causes. You can just sit there. Yeah. So, and so that's something that's interesting is if we think about the lost causes, often what would happen was the people who would go to the chiropractor were not the people who were that they expected to get well. They were often the patients who they expected to die. So it didn't matter what they did, and that's when they would go to the chiropractor. And it's kind of so also 233 cases that the medical doctors had given up as lost causes. The chiropractors saved all but 25 of those.
Wow.
Is that kind of cool?
Yeah.
You go, oh my goodness gracious. So why does it work and how is it different from medicines? And so this is the adjustments to your spine, optimize nerve flow, and thus boost your immune system. That puts your shields up essentially. Like you watch people walking around with the face mask. Well, more importantly, think about this adjustment giving your whole body a shield, right? That's really what we need, and we want the very force of our presence and our healing power in our bodies that even if something comes at us, our body's going to say, hey, that's a little arrow, and it's going to destroy it, right? We want to think like this. And I do have another video, so if you're interested in watching immune system function, go to our website, daychiropractic.com. I've got other videos that I've taught. One when we were in the middle of that Ebola, I did a film there too. So, and enhancing immune system function. In fact, I've got a blog site. If you go to daychiropractic.com, I've got links. So if you really want to pursue this, there's lots of ways of doing it, various videos, and Dr. Mercola, there's all sorts of stuff that's available to you if you want more information. But I want you to have kind of appreciate the wonders of our body tonight. When you leave today, I want you to go, this is just amazing. God made us incredibly well. 137 million light receptors in your eyes, 100,000 hearing receptors in our ears, 3,000 taste buds, 30,000 heat sensing spots, and 5,000 touch spots. I mean, imagine just these receptors alone. I mean, if we dissolved all of you but left your receptors there, we would still see all your features. And you've got sensors for light touch, which are different from the ones for deep touch. It's just really amazing, and it's all under the control and coordination of the nerve system. The other thing to think about is our bodies. I mean, we think about the flu vaccine because it's supposed to protect someone, but let's not be enthralled by that. Let's be enthralled by the body and how God designed us and all these different elements that help us fight stuff. Okay, so we got phagocytosis, which is destruction by white blood cells and macrophages, like Pac-Man. Those are within your bloodstream, that's circulated throughout your body, right? We have stomach acid, and most people don't think about that as being part of our defense system, right? But it really is. You know, we think about these viral particles and things that are going to come at us. Well, imagine if somebody had coughed on their hands and then you went and shook their hands or something like that. Well, then if you get that, you better hope you get it in your mouth and get it down into your gullet, because one of the places that it can be killed is in your stomach. Now, what if you're taking antacids though, right, because you got a little heartburn or something like that? You understand, if you're taking a pill, that's correct, then the stomach acid will not be as potent, right, because it'll be neutralizes, right? And you go, wait a minute, by doing something to make my symptom go down, I'm making myself, my own body's fighting power is diminished, because it won't have the chance to fry the thing that gets down there, right? So it's kind of interesting. Our skin surface, the best protection is when there are no cuts or scrapes. So, you know, like I just think I was working out my yard on the rose bushes and stuff. We have to think about this now. So let's be thoughtful with what we do. Our skin surface. Let's try to think about. Okay, let's not put ourselves. Let's not just run out and try to find ways to scrape our skin up, right? Let's think about keeping our skin as healthy as we can. There's all sorts of chemicals in our blood, so let's make sure we're drinking lots of water, we're hydrated, and all that sort of stuff. And you think about, well, the control of all this is actually the nerve system. So, and this is in 1993. I was really fascinated by this. The relationship between the nerve system and the immune system was first reported by researchers in 1993. So I had already been in practice long. You know, I started practicing in 1986. So. In 1903, the journal Nature with the New York Times reported on the day it was published, scientists have found the first evidence of an anatomical connection between the nerve system and the immune system. Nerve cells ending in the skin and white blood cells of the immune system are in intimate contact, and chemicals secreted by the nerves can shut down immune system cells nearby. Is this crazy? And now we're almost thinking that we could almost think about your immune system as a circulating nerve system, or vice versa. They interact together.
If your nerves are screwed up.
If your nerves are screwed up, then what does that mean for your immune system, right? It means you're a little more vulnerable. So anything we can do to optimize the nerve system function will help our immune system. Anything we do to our immune system will help our nerve system. It's kind of like there's a you go, oh, that's kind of interesting. So another study of HIV positive patients. Now, and as we talk about HIV, one of the things that the medical doctors are going to want to do to these patients who are infected with this, they're going to want to use some of the antiviral stuff that they came up with HIV. And quite frankly, that may not be a bad strategy. All right, but let's think of something, right? This is a different paradigm we're talking about. So the HIV positive patients was conducted to study the effects of specific chiropractic adjustments to correct vertebral subluxations in the upper neck on their immune systems. Over the 6-month period of the study, the group that did not receive chiropractic care experienced a decrease in CD4 cells, but the group that received chiropractic adjustments experienced a 48% increase in these cells that we want over the same period. So wait a minute. If you didn't get chiropractic care, you were kind of going downhill, right? But if you got chiropractic care, vroom, right? You go, oh, wait a minute, and that's HIV. That's AIDS, right? Mm-hmm. Another virus, probably from a monkey derivative. But anyhow, you have the large-scale study. So here's another study that was published. Now, about previous physical symptoms include stiffness, lack of flexibility in the spine, physical pain, fatigue. Those are the sorts of things you kind of would expect patients under chiropractic care to have. Well, they also noted their incidence of colds and flus, headaches, menstrual discomfort, gastrointestinal disorders, allergies, dizziness, and falls. They all improved. In fact, most significant, the incidence of colds and flu were reduced by an average of 15% in this large population who are undergoing regular chiropractic care. And I would say that's been my experience is if somebody has had chronic, they always get the flu or they always something like that, when they start under chiropractic care, and then if they decide to be under more of a long-term care, where they decide to make that more of a kind of a way of life, essentially, right, where you come in periodically, you will tend not to have anywhere near the incidence of flus or sicknesses. In fact, the last sick day that I had was when we came back from Europe, probably in 97 or something like that. Here's 2020. It's like I haven't had a sick day, right? You understand? it's if you really live this way, you can be where you don't have sick days. You don't, it's really remarkable. So our body does develop immunity based on exposure to bugs and chemicals. Now this is one of the challenges we face with when we talk about a novel, and this is where some of the flus are bad because they're new. The body has no experience with them, so that's why this system really won't work so well. But it's part of what essentially the body is supposed to learn from the things that we have successfully fought off, and it will then store the template for the antidote, essentially. So you've got antibodies and sensitized lymphocytes, and these are your lymph system. They're in your neck, armpits, and groins, your tonsils, adenoids, your spleen, your GI tract, and in bone marrow, sort of thing, is where these lymph tissues exist. Now, and so think conceptually, the nodes in our neck, they protect us from where we breathe, right? So guess what? So we want those to be, because if this flu, it's largely respiratory droplets or something. A lot of it will be coming this way. Lymph tissue in our GI tract protects us from the food we eat, right? So this is where if the food that we eat has E. coli or any of those other things, we want our lymph system to be ready to, or salmonella, those types of things. The spleen and bone marrow protect us from antigens and bugs in our blood. So if our gut is leaky gut and it's allowing some things into our bloodstream itself, then we want.
If you don't have a spleen?
Well, it's one of the reservoirs of that. That's a little bit of a problem, isn't it? Yeah. Well, but the body adapts. Just like if somebody has their gallbladder taken out, well, the liver changes. Instead of just having a duct, it will enlarge and make a cavern there, so it can still function. So that when we eat fatty foods, it squirts out. It's really amazing how the body can adapt. But we would prefer you to have a spleen. But if it's not there, well, the body's going to do the best it can.
It was trying to regrow one.
Really?
Yeah.
I love it. So there are all sorts of different lymphocytes, and over 10,000 of them, and it's really amazing. So have you ever known a child who's been sick all the time? One of the best things you could actually do then is talk about going to a chiropractor and see if we can actually get that working better. A malpositioned vertebra that puts pressure on your nerve causes abnormal function. And this has the ability to reduce your ability to resist disease, because that's ultimately, if that child has a subluxation, and you can watch how they run, how they play, if they sleep well at night, if they're eating good food and things like that, and if you're finding this kid is sickly, then one thing is look very carefully at this. Now, the thymus gland, in these processes, stem cells, so this would be very early in life in terms of the T lymphocytes, shortly before birth, and for the first 2 months of life. So this is something, it's part of our immune system that by the time we're adults, it's no longer really even functioning here. So each antigen or irritating substance or invading microbe causes a specific and unique lymphocyte to form. And this is one of the fun things for me, because we need as many as 100,000 different cells in our lymph glands that are poised to multiply rapidly if exposed to that specific antigen. So how many of us have ever noticed that, I'm sick, I've got a swollen gland in my neck, right? And it's often on one side and not the other, or it's right here where it's sore. You go, well, why is that happening? Maybe, and I try to reframe people so they don't think that they're sick, so they have that, but it's their body is fighting something, and the reason it's swollen is it is the thing that your body needs to put into production to fight this is housed in that particular lymph gland. So that's part of your body's ability to fight off something that it's dealing with. And so don't think of that as, I've got swollen glands, so I'm sick. Think of that, I've got a gland right here. Let's go, let's produce, and try to keep that flowing and going, right? That sort of thing. And don't let it get you down. Get excited about that. This is how your body.
With cancer, it makes those little, to cover which. It makes the nodules,
yeah, but this is different than a cancer situation, right?
Yeah.
This is where we're talking about an immune system that's designed to stores the template that's there. So our experience really helps us. Now, there's some controversy. As I was preparing for this, one of the things I was looking up was vulnerability to people who have flu shots versus those who have had the flu. And we'll talk a little bit about this, but one of the problems is if you actually get the flu or a sickness or something like that, and your body fights it naturally, it holds the ability to recognize something even closer, similar to it, more effectively. When we are given a shot, it will create the antibody for that thing, but it's just for that one thing. There doesn't seem to be the adaptive the capacity to even get something then that's close to it. So it's like the even if there is an immunity, it's not the same as one that we get from actually having a disease and successfully fighting it and storing that template. There must be something about that. I don't even think I'm gonna talk about that one. So since its inception, chiropractic has asserted that viruses and microbes don't threaten us all equally, and that a healthy immune system easily repels most invaders. The immune system protects us from the flu as well as any other infectious disease and strives to get us well again when we do fall ill. So our immune system, like every other system in the body, is coordinated and controlled by the nerve system. So these results are not so surprising given that we know about the interaction between the nerve system and the immune system like we talked about. Through research, we know that chiropractic has beneficial effects on immunoglobulins, beta lymphocytes, white blood cells, pulmonary function, and other immune processes. So here was an interesting study that was done by Dr. Brannon and her team. She found that when a chiropractic adjustment was applied to the middle back, the response of white blood cells taken from blood collected 15 minutes after the manipulation of the adjustment was significantly higher than that collected 15 minutes before and 30 and 45 minutes after the chiropractic procedure. Essentially, they talk about an enhanced respiratory burst. Something happens about 15 minutes, within that 15-minute time frame of an adjustment. And this burst is needed for our immune cells to destroy invading viruses and bacteria. So, and it's something that happens right around the time of the adjustment. It's kind of exciting for me because it's like, all right, you go, that 15 minutes. So be proactive. What do you believe? You're going to live in fear of the bug or be committed to stand up and fight? So I've got all sorts of resources for you if you're interested. Dr. Mercola talked about high quality multivitamins, vitamin D, C, garlic, zinc, oregano, medicinal mushrooms, propolis. Bees make that out of the out of the fir trees and so forth. That's that sort of stuff. Olive leaf extract, herbal teas, probiotics. I mean, these are really easy things for us to incorporate. So I would say, if you're interested in being proactive, make sure you have the vitamins and make sure then you do some of these exciting things. Probiotics are very accessible, so we should probably all be taking some probiotics now. The other thing is I'm talking about is colostrum, and this is one of the few things I do stock because it would be really hard for you to find. It's called Immunostart, and it's have you heard about mother's milk when you first have a little baby? One of the ways that you transmit a portion of the mother's immune experience to her child is through the first few days of when her milk comes in. So it's called colostrum. It's actually not so much milk as it's a lot of these things. So this is on that line. This is colostrum essentially, and because it's a right? Because we think about antibiotics, the things that kill bugs. Well, what are some things that I can do that are pro-immunity? What did God design, right? Well, he had mom pass to baby before baby has had a chance. See, because baby hasn't had their nerve system and their immune system hasn't had a chance to develop, right? So mom can give some of that imparted to the child, which is just absolutely fantastic. So I give this, like if there's a lot of times when teachers just graduate and become new teachers, and they're going to a classroom with all these kids with immune systems that haven't developed very well, a lot of times the teachers are sick a lot. So this is one of the things that I can do is have teachers take this, they just put it under their tongue, or when we're flying in an airplane, you're going to be in that can for hours with all sorts of people with who knows what, right? If we take this, it really helps. So back to our shield, and we're thinking proactively. What are the things I can do that are pro-immune system to keep myself healthy? No, this particular, you put it under your tongue, it's like a lozenge. Okay. And because we want to coat all our mucous membranes, all that sort of stuff, and swallow a little bit of it and all that sort of stuff, yeah. So chiropractic, we talk about, and why do I measure stuff like your heart rate variability, your thermal, we're looking for things that are wrong in your nerve system. And if there's a flaw or a deficit in your nerve system, let's identify it. Not necessarily where where do you hurt, right? You want me to find out if your nerve system has a defect or a deficiency that we can do. So vitamin D, and I will talk, and I'm not going to spend too much time about this, but Dr. Mercola really has been an advocate of this, and I really think there's something to be said about it. Partly because the flu season, you've heard about the flu season, it really correlates to the time when the sunlight is the least, and it's also here in the Northwest. We have a lot of vitamin D deficiency, so I'm almost thinking that almost all of us should be taking some vitamin D, and it would help function in our terms of our immune system. And so this is, if you have darker skin, you need more sun. If you feel blue, serotonin rises with exposure to sunlight, improve your mood, but lowers with decreased exposure to sunlight. And then if you're over 50, we make less vitamin D. And if we're overweight or obese, the problem is vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, so it gets sucked up with the rest of my fat cells. So we have achy bones, plays a role in calcium in bones, head sweats. So if you're getting head sweats, that's one of the first signs that you're deficient in vitamin D.
That's what my naturopath.
Is that right? Yeah.
Right
See,
away.
It's kind of crazy, isn't it? But it's like our gut trouble. So if the GI tract has trouble absorbing fats, you may have less vitamin D absorbed too. So it's kind of interesting as we think about these sorts of things. And the thing where you get vitamin D. We say sunlight. Well, sunlight is what activates the vitamin D. But egg yolks, raw milk, fish, high quality supplements. So most of us are faced with having to supplement vitamin D. Anyhow. So when we start talking about the chiropractic lifestyle, what can we do? Start thinking about what are the healthy things that we can do. So rest, drinking ample quantities of water, diet, exercise, proper food choices, use of high potency multivitamins and minerals. And when you have to find a vitamin line that tends to feel good in your body. It's got to be high enough quality that it doesn't just sit like a lead balloon or not digest well. I like vitamins that are derived mostly from plants and those sorts of things that are, and I like using a line of products that where the people are passionate about the quality and those sorts of things. And do we have to be on the bleeding edge? Probably not, but at least be with a line that has integrity and really is passionate about saving the world with proper nutrition. That's, you want to be affiliated with that sort of a line, that sort of thing. So I guess the question is, should you listen to your medical doctor? Should you listen to your chiropractor? And I would advocate. I mean, bless their hearts. I mean, the doctors are doing the best they can, and they're sincere about their desire to help people, right? So I don't want to be that. And if you're in a position where you're in a place where you work and you have to get a flu shot or you have no choice, I understand. But I do want to kind of tweak it, kind of get your get thinking about some of these things here. So. A leading immunogeneticist said if an individual has had 5 consecutive flu shots, his or her chances of getting Alzheimer's disease is 10 times higher than if they had just had 1, 2, or done. Okay.
I've had 2.
It's the mercury.
Okay, good.
At one
Well,
point.
so this is gradual mercury and aluminum from the shots. And we don't know, and some of them, they say, oh, there's no, okay, if it's not mercury, what do you use it? You're going to use something terrible, right? And they have total, what drives me nuts is the vaccine manufacturers have total immunity from suits. So that it's like the fox guarding the hen house. There isn't any incentive for them to,
that they say that they're saying this on the internet.
Yes.
Alzheimer's is come from a bad experiment that they did with aluminum.
Well, or there's some of that is in
and
these.
And they put it in the air and they put it in the water.
Yeah, we don't know where it all is, but this is another what they're thinking. There's the implication is mercury and aluminum. There's something about that, right? Mm-hmm. Now, there's cooking pots, so we had aluminum, and you see the pits in the so there's lots of conversations we could have about that, but there's something about that, yes. Also, Guillain-Barré syndrome is another possible adverse reaction to the shot. The assumption is that the flu shot is the best option, and it's rarely tested. So that's the thing is, and to be fair, I mean, they don't really have a chance to do it because every year is different, right? They make a new one every year. They kind of, this is what we got, that's kind of. But I wish there were a way to be more skeptical of it, right? And Because here's a study that was done in 1997. That was done in Israel. It will never be done in the U.S. There will never be a study of the flu here. The assumption is it's effective, so no one would even question.
Well, I'm actually doing biofeedback.
Okay, sure.
And that I mean, it's amazing how your body accepts different things.
Yes.
And it tells the lady that gives us our
of your vitamins and that. So yeah, absolutely. And that's a much better strategy, because here what they did is this was done in 1997. The seniors who got repeated flu shots had a decrease in antibodies. So they compared the people who had the flu shot versus those who didn't. Now you would have expected that if you had been getting the flu shot, you're more protected. Well, the research said the ones who had the flu shots actually had the lower titers. The ones who had not gotten the shots had a higher level of the flu fighting components, which is interesting.
Well, I've had the flu for 4 years now.
There we go. Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is, and let's be proactive. Let's do stuff like what we're doing here, right? So, and I wish that this is, by the way, even if you assume the flu shot is good, they guess 1 year in advance when they make up the next year's vaccine. And what if the projected strain is way off? They should not even give it, but that's never a recommendation. So if there were integrity to this, and if they would say, this year we kind of missed it, so don't bother with the flu shot this year.
Yeah.
That would, that I would appreciate that, right? Then it would make me more likely to consider these. But when what seems to, and this is just my perception, I don't know if I'm right or not, but it feels to me like even when they know it's off, they say, well, it's the best get it, and you need to, of all the years, you need to get it this year.
Yeah,
it's like, seriously.
That's exactly. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, it's driving me nuts, but that's okay. That's not very far. Okay, so here I just thought I would talk about this because the USSR in February of 2014 there was an influenza outbreak, and it's a minesweeper. There were 102 crew members. Well, 25 got flu-like symptoms, although 99% had been vaccinated. So the problem that I'm running into is there's enough of these stories where people who had a vaccine, they've been vaccinated, but they're getting sick anyway. So it's like, well, if it works, why do we have this, right? And this was just this December of this year. Catholic school down at St. Teresa's Catholic School in Houston. They had to close the school because they had a 100% vaccination rate, but whooping cough started to go throughout the school, so they had to close the school to stop the outbreak. And it's not the flu, I know it, but it's back to the concept of they had every one of these kids had been vaccinated for whooping cough, right? But they still got sick. And so that's another problem that I have is that if we're trusting in the vaccine to do it, it might be we shouldn't maybe put all our hope on that. All right. Another thing that they scare people into getting the flu shot, and I don't want tonight to be the flu shot talk, but we're talking about coronavirus. It is a flu, right? One of the way they scare people is they say 200,000 people are hospitalized and 36,000 people die from the flu every year. Well, that's just wrong. The reason it's wrong is the CDC combines pneumonia deaths with flu deaths. When you take and go back and look at the actual research, there's probably less than 1,000 people every year dying from the flu. The vast majority of those deaths are actually pneumonia. And I believe what they did is they lumped them together to make it seem like the flu was a lot worse than it actually is. We don't really, not that many people actually die from the flu. Most of the deaths are the pneumonia. And it's not even the same, pneumococcus versus, although they're, and how the medical doctors talk about it is if you get the flu, you're sick, right? And then you might be more susceptible to get the pneumonia. You know what I mean? So it's not that they're wrong, but it's they're playing. It's like a shell game. They're trying to make it seem worse than it actually is. So
it has to do with money.
Money and philosophy. Because the medical whole world is there's a bug that's attacking you, and we need to kill the bug. But as opposed to the chiropractor saying, well, maybe the bug is virulent. Yeah, you better bring your A game, right? That's kind of, it's not that they're wrong, but I want to play with a different strategy, right? Perspective. So Barbara Lowe Fisher, National Vaccine Information Council says only 500 to 700 people die from the flu each year. Although, like the worst year, 2009, yes, there were almost 3,000 people who died from the swine flu pandemic, and that was another. We talk about these viruses that make a jump, right? So the swine flu, that was one of them, and it jumped from pigs to man, which is probably how the Spanish flu actually probably Do you know why it's called the Spanish flu?
Spain.
Yes, it is because of Spain, but why was it called? Was that where it started? No, it probably started in the kind of in a military base here in the U.S. But why did it get called the Spanish flu then? What was happening in 1918 and 1919? What was going on in the world?
War.
World War I, right? And during wartime, what did the governments do? They suppress the press, right? They only release things because they don't want the morale to be damaged. So most of the European countries and the American countries did not report. Now, one of the problems we have with China, there may be more deaths than we know about, right? Because they don't want to be embarrassed by it or that sort of thing, right? You understand? So when you have a situation, so here in the United States of America, in 1918, 1919, they were not allowed to report on this because of in the war they didn't want it, and it probably started in one of the service bases, right? So it's we have to be careful that we don't get too proud of things like that, because our futures, our past sometimes kind of isn't all that great. Now, what I wanted to briefly is talk about the symptoms, and so fever, cough, shortness of breath, and well, I talked about that one cruise ship, the Diamond Princess. You know, the other disaster we have on our hands is this Holland America ship. The MS, the Western Dam, they thought, you know, they were floating around by Asia. They were going to be stopping at all the Asian ports, but they said, no, don't come in, don't come in. So all their China itineraries, no. All their Japan stops, no. So they were adrift, essentially. And then Cambodia finally said, okay, you can land here and get off and all that sort of stuff. Well, everything was going great. They'd been out for 14 days and they let the people off. But when one of the Americans was flying back to the U.S. at the Malaysian airport, they stopped her because she was developing a fever. And she's got it. So what that means is they are now having to contact because they let a lot of people, now there's still some people on the ship, so they're keeping them on the ship, right? But as we saw from the Diamond Princess, that's a disaster. And this article that I've just found today is Diamond Princess Quarantine, an epic failure. We're probably going to realize that you should not keep people on a cruise ship who are, you know, because probably the ventilation and the food on, and just they're under quarantine, but they're not under strict quarantine, right? The people who are interior cabins, they would let them go up and walk around on the deck. Oh. Well, they were all wearing masks, but you know, they're not treating it like a true quarantine, like a medical quarantine sort of thing, right? They're treating it too casually. They don't understand that they need to think more. But it's really unfortunate that so many of these people. So I'm really curious to see what they're going to do about with this Western Dam, because the people that flew home, they're going to have to contact all the people who are on the planes that were these people. You know, it's quite a logistical challenge, and it could very easily get away from us if we're not careful, right? So we just pray. We don't know how persistent this will be. You know, like. Well, what about that cruise ship? Let's say they get everybody off the Diamond Princess. What will it take to kill the virus? What if they empty it out for 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks, fumigate it, do all sorts of stuff? Is the virus still sitting somewhere, like in a bathroom, or, you know, I don't know. They don't know what they're going to do, right? It's one of those kind of scary things, but. Anyhow, so it should go, ooh, my word. Anyhow, so look at so fever is one of the things, but if you look at the flu, sudden onset typically, significant head to toe body ache, fever, dry cough, headache, sore throat occasionally. So, you know, it's kind of the same thing, right? It's like, oh dear. Now pneumonia is a little bit different. Your cough usually produces phlegm. There's a lot of shortness of breath, and there's more of a gradual onset, usually not severe aches and pains like the flu. Bronchitis typically doesn't cause a fever, so people, and they're not so fatigued they miss work or stay in bed. You know, so these are all kind of similar things, but that fever. So that's why you see those guys with guns, and they're measuring the and that's how they caught that lady off the Western Dam at the airport. Was they're doing scanners, you know, to see if you're running to see if you're running a fever, right? Because that's if you are, then the odds of it, you know. So it's kind of ooh. So sinusitis typically no fever, that colorful mucus, heavy head, no body aches, fatigue, you don't miss work, and that sort of thing. So then, what can you do to keep as healthy as we possibly can? Get adjusted regularly. I would say once every 2 weeks to once a month, somewhere in that range. Don't go longer than a month. Then you're probably not being proactive. I mean, that would, you know, if you're trying to say shields up sort of thing, at least once a month. Make sure you're doing proper nutrition, supplements, eat live foods. And
Live foods.
Yes, and by that I mean let's watch out that we're not going and buying a lot of the boxed foods, right? Buy food, go to the actual where the fruits and vegetables are, and we're gonna make a stir fry tonight, okay? So we'll cut up the zucchini, cut up the broccoli, cut up the carrots, that'll all be, and we'll make a stir fry. And you try not to fry them, you want fresh vegetables, try to keep them so there's still crunch to them, that sort of stuff, right? Local and fresh, avoid processed foods. Regular exercise, I'd rather do 5 days rather than just 3 days. More of shorter would probably be better for this sake. Adequate and fitful sleep. Avoid immune suppressants like over-the-counter cold pills, allergy pills. Say no to antibiotics. Yes to probiotics and Immunostart. Have a proactive life strategy where optimal health is your goal, right? You're not just trying to survive, you're trying to be optimally healthy. Good multivitamin, vitamin D, C, garlic, zinc, Irish mushrooms. Make sure that your nerve system is as good as we possibly can get it with the chiropractic and all the assessments and all that sort of stuff. And I've already talked about that. So avoid. The other thing is not just the things that you want to eat, but the things to avoid then. Refined sugars, processed foods. So when we go...
So precise.
Right. Well, and the other thing is, it is interesting. I do have the McDonald's app on my phone, but it is something, man. I really do need to eat that salad. It's hard sometimes, right? Because when it's cold, I don't feel like eating a salad. Or if you're going to eat a hamburger, take off the bun so you don't get as much of the carbs and that sort of stuff. No sugar sweetened drink. Eat slowly. Drink between bites. And if you're eating a lot of meals, and this is something that Karen and I are really working at because we're both so busy. Like tonight, teaching the class, the temptation is I don't feel like cooking. Neither of us will feel like cooking. We both will have worked a long day. This would be a real temptation to go out or go eat something, or just I'll stop and get something. I'll get pizza on the way home. We could cook it, but that's not really the way we should do it.
How about sweet tomatoes?
I know. I'm boycotting them right now because they got rid of their peas. They have edamame instead. I don't eat edamame.
Oh, okay.
They say, well, it's a lot healthier. And I go, and I'm a chiropractor. I should like that, right? But I like peas. I like peas in my salad. My wife thinks I'm nuts, but anyhow, so yeah. What's that? Does he do?
I didn't even know what those things were.
Yeah, it's edamame. It's like, to me, it looks like little lima beans. Why would I eat those?
True,
And they're probably good for you, but I'm going. I'm not going to eat that. So we do need to ask, is my life so frantic that I eat in a run? So should I make some changes, right? And that is something to think about. And if we commit to eliminating carbs, it'll keep us out of our worst problems. That's one of the things I'm experimenting right now is I'm trying to eat just within certain time frames. So my snacking, because I can eat anytime, and everything looks good, sounds good. I love to eat it, but the problem is I have to have some sort of gate, to keep me from running off the rails, So you can, so avoiding the carbs is one of the great ways. Another way is to eat maybe certain windows of times to eat.
Evidently, we need to learn to not do sugar anymore because sugar on the internet, they said the sugar was disappearing.
Really?
Yeah.
Because we're eating so much of it?
Uh-huh.
That would be good. Yeah, we eat way too much sugar, man. All right. So locally, grow your own garden. So that's the other thing is I've got, in fact, I've got a patient. He's going to start gardening, and it's like cool. This is really fun. I like it when people make some choices and decide to do some things like this. And grass-fed beef, lamb, free-range chicken, and so forth. Veggie-centric diet, and move away from dairy. Ideally, the farther away from milk, the better, right? So cheese is better than milk. That sort of stuff. If it's sour cream would be better, the more fermented, those sorts of things are.
I found out I'm allergic to everything dairy except goat milk.
Fantastic. Yeah, my little grandson, they're just doing goat milk on him, yeah. So listen to your body. If you're pushing too hard, take a nap and relax. Say no to over-the-counter immune suppressants. Laugh, pursue activities you love and that bring you joy. So when we start talking about optimal health, right, we have to talk about this. And it's not just the flu shot, but it's what's your life look like, and are you satisfied? And beyond satisfied, are you fulfilled? Are you finding joy? Prayer and forgiveness should infuse our lives. Essential oils can help. Some people love that. It really helps them.
We really go with that.
Yeah. And we do have to watch out that we don't watch too much of the news, you know. The problem is my wife likes Hallmark movies, so I'm having to watch more Hallmark movies with her. But it's anyhow, but it's, you know, I think it is bad if we do get so consumed by the things outside of us. We have no control over them. We can get upset by them. And so I don't think that's healthy for us. I think we need to stay with the things we have some control over and that really do affect our personal lives. We need to stay fit, exercise regularly, but don't go crazy with that, you know.
Well, you know what I found out is with our son?
What's that?
He likes video games. And he yells at them.
No, really? He
Yeah.
gets into it, huh?
He gets really upset when he gets shot by
That's so funny.
by the other person.
He takes it personally, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So this who to believe, and this is how I'm going to close tonight. My doctors told me I would never walk again. My mother told me I would, and I believed my mother. That was by Wilma Rudolph, and she was a well-known Olympian from years past. But let me tell you about a little girl who was born into a very poor family in a shack in the backwoods of Tennessee. She was the 20th of 22 children.
Whoa.
Think about that. Prematurely born and frail. Her survival was doubtful. Well, when she was 4 years old, she had double pneumonia and scarlet fever, which was a deadly combination, that left her with a paralyzed and useless left leg. She had to wear an iron leg brace. Yes, she was fortunate in having a mother who encouraged her. Well, this mother told her little girl, who was very bright, that despite the brace and leg, she could do whatever she wanted to do with her life. She told her that all she needed to do was to have faith, persistence, courage, and an indomitable spirit. So at 9 years of age, the little girl removed that leg brace and took the step that doctors told her that she would never take normally. In 4 years, she developed a rhythmic stride, which was a medical wonder. Then this little girl got the incredible notion that she would like to be the world's greatest woman runner. Now, what could she mean, be a runner with a leg like that? This was a leg that had been paralyzed, right? Well, at age 13, she entered a race, and she came in last, way last. Well, she entered every race in high school, and in every race she came in last. Okay, so imagine being the mom of this little girl, right? You can imagine the conversations they were having. Everyone begged her to quit. However, one day she came in next to last. And then there came a day when she won a race. From then on, Wilma Rudolph won every race she entered.
Oh my goodness.
So when we think about who are you going to believe, right? Are we going to believe the doctors or you could believe the mother? And I want to be like the mom who will encourage that kid to do things even against all odds. So can I encourage you? We're going to fight this thing, all right? You're going to be healthy. You're going to stay healthy. When I adjust you, it's going to help you live. It's not just going to help you stay healthy or so your back doesn't hurt you. So thank you all for coming, and thanks for this opportunity to share this.